Well, the Eagles finally began their search for a new offensive coordinator yesterday, and they started with a very surprising interview of a coach who had some really high praises for Jalen Hurts in the past. But you need to hear why one NFL insider, wait for it, suggested that the Eagles trade Jalen Hurts this offseason. It's more dumb than I could ever imagine. Wait till you read this. And Eagles GM Howie Roseman just got 4 new picks to work with in April's upcoming NFL draft. I'm Thomas Mott. This is the Thomas Mott Show. Well, all of us are eagerly awaiting for today's highly anticipated joint press conference with Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman some point this afternoon. Let's first, though, give a quick shout-out to former Eagle Zach Ertz, who waited until the literal last minute to finally sign with the football team after it was announced yesterday he will be a Detroit Lion for, I guess, this weekend and hopefully the Super Bowl. I mean, this is pretty funny. Waiting literally weeks and weeks and weeks just to figure out who's going to the NFC Championship game and then signing with the Detroit Lions is quite the cherry-picking move, but come on, it's Zach Ertz. We love 86, and if he can go join a Detroit Lions team that I'm personally rooting for and also beat the San Francisco 49ers, then more power to him. Now, the bigger surprise for me was what happened late last night when the Eagles apparently interviewed former Arizona Cardinals head coach and USC offensive assistant Kliff Kingsbury virtually, according to Mike Garfolo. I was shocked by this. I forgot that Kliff Kingsbury was even really looking for an OC job after flaming out with the Arizona Cardinals, but the takes on Twitter from Eagle fans about the possibility of either liking Kliff or disliking Kliff were pretty darn wild. Now, let's first acknowledge the elephant in the room. Kliff Kingsbury's offenses, at least in Arizona, they weren't that great. I mean, overall, he was 28, 37, and 1 as the head coach for the Arizona Cardinals and struggled to make Kyler Murray into a superstar after drafting him #1 overall in the hopes that Kingsbury and Murray would create an offensive juggernaut. And while a lot of people like to point out that his offenses weren't fantastic, they weren't that bad. They were kind of always middle of the pack, as you see here. It was his 2022 offense that finished 23rd in points per game that really resulted in his firing. Now, clearly, he isn't some offensive genius with a crazy good track record, but we've seen time and time again that some play callers make terrible head coaches, but in fact go back to be really, really good coordinators. Now, I'm not saying Kliff Kingsbury is my #1 overall target, but the idea that he would be a terrible play caller just because his Cardinals didn't have the best offense in the league is a little bit of a stretch. Plus, if the idea is to maximize Jalen Hurts' abilities, Kliff Kingsbury, he at least believes in #1 as he tried to recruit him out of high school, telling Doug Peterson back in 2020, quote, "I like #2. That was then Hurts' number. He came in there, and the moment's not too big for him. I recruited him in high school, and he was the same way. Most mature, knew he was going to be something type kid. Then, of course, more recently, before the Eagles' 2022 Week 5 matchup in Arizona, Kliff again sung the praises of the Eagles quarterback.
Kliff, how much growth have you seen in Jalen Hurts' game since the last time you guys played him?
Yeah, he's tremendous. I told our staff, I mean, he's one of the best decision makers in the league as far as where to go with the football, when to throw it, when to tuck it, when to make plays, and he's always been a winner. I mean, I remember recruiting him in high school and just legendary work ethic, whether it was in high school or at Alabama or now at Philly. You hear stories of how late he's there and how hard he's working, and it pays off. I mean, he's a tremendous talent. They've done a great job building that offense around him, great O-line, great skilled position players, and he's really operating at a high level.
Now, I need to see the whole list of people Philadelphia's going to interview before I decide who's my #1 candidate or my least favorite candidate. But the idea that Eagle fans are expecting to get the best offensive play caller in this year's cycle, like a Ben Johnson, is just ridiculous. You are going to get a recycled former head coach or an unproven, inexperienced offensive coordinator, and you just got to hope that they turn out to be better than what the Eagles were in 2023. Like, for instance, how about former Falcons head coach Arthur Smith, who certainly received a call from Philadelphia the other day, according to the Athletic's Diana Rossini, who said, quote, "Former Falcons head coach Arthur Smith has received serious interest by more than 7 teams about joining their offensive staff as the offensive coordinator. Per sources, he will have options." And just like Kliff Kingsbury, Smith failed as a head coach. He was 7-10, had the 8th overall draft pick all 3 seasons he was in Atlanta. But as an OC in Tennessee, his unit ranked #2 in yards and #4 in points during Smith's final season as the play caller. And of course, just like Kliff's Cardinals back in 2022, the Falcons played Philadelphia in 2021. Before that matchup, Arthur Smith spoke very highly of Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, we've got a ton of respect for Jalen Hurts. Everywhere that Jalen's been, he's won games at high level. Got a really strong arm. He's tough as hell. We know he can push the ball down the field and certainly can extend plays, but he's got a live arm, and we got a hell of a challenge.
Now, I think Philadelphia is going to rush to go ahead and sign an offensive coordinator. I'm sure they have a very strong list of candidates, and they're working through interviews, and they probably haven't even announced some of the people that they actually have already talked to via Zoom. My main goal, though, is to show me an offense that's a little bit more unique than it was in 2023 and make sure Jalen Hurts is given every single possibility to succeed going forward. Now, speaking of Jalen, it didn't take long for the first literally insane article from Pro Football Talk's Mike Florio to come out, ripping Hurts yesterday by titling this clickbait masterpiece, wait for it, "Contract makes it easy for Eagles to trade Jalen Hurts in theory." Now, if you were dumb enough to click on this word salad like I did, you'd quickly realize that you were duped by Mike Florio, and that trading Jalen Hurts would be an absolute long shot when he said, quote, "Again, the Eagles would have to find a team willing to take on the contract if they can, and if Hurts is willing to waive his no-trade clause, the structure of his contract allows it to happen." That's not to say it will happen, it's just to say it could happen given the manner in which the deal is structured. I mean, come on, this is pure clickbait. All they're trying to do is generate clicks during what is technically a quiet beginning of the offseason, although so far for Philadelphia, there's been plenty to go ahead and talk about. Remember, Hurts still had an incredible season in 2023 where he tried to make the most out of what was a completely vanilla offense. He wasn't perfect. He turned the ball over too many times, took too many sacks, but he did have 2,000-yard receivers and had Philadelphia at 10-1, and he was seemingly a lock to win MVP after this game-winning rushing touchdown versus the Buffalo Bills. Now, that's not to say Hurts is without criticism. I mean, sure, the Eagles lost 6 of their last 7. They got obliterated in the playoffs. Hurts was not playing his best football, and if you believe the article we talked about yesterday on the show from Bleeding Green Nation, it outlined how multiple sources called Hurts at times detached, isolated, and unapproachable. Now, I'm still hesitant on whether or not this is true. I mean, you remember, the same sort of article came out about Carson Wentz, and all of us said, no, it can't be true, and then it turned out it actually was. And then you listen to Barrett Brooks on Jacob Media yesterday talk about this interesting story regarding Britton Covey.
Number 2, I'm not going to say anything about it, but listen to what, Covey said. Covey said, well, I've always had the time to go in and talk to any coach, an open door policy, but I didn't because, I was scared to death to go in there. He equated that to the same thing as Jalen Hurts. I believe I could go talk to him, but I never did because I was scared to death. I've never been around a player that I was scared to death to go talk to. Never. And if a player I thought would put himself in that type of error about himself, I'd let him know.
You mean like unapproachable?
Yes, unapproachable, yes. Saying he was unapproachable. Then this is Britton Covey. That's not me saying this. This is Britton Covey's own words. Saying, that, he was scared to death to go talk to him. So to me, that's never been who Jalen was. And if it became that side of him is now being given to his team, that's pretty damning. And that's something that, he's going to have to, do something about.
Now, Covey responded to this video today on Twitter saying, quote, "Someone asked me if Jalen's stoic personality turned people away, if he was intimidating/unapproachable, to which I basically said that I've had coaches like that in the past, but Jalen wasn't like that. And the moment you talk to him, you realize how approachable he is. I truly don't get this narrative. Jalen's authenticity is what makes him a great leader. He'll eat lunch with the lowest-ranking guys on the team like myself. He's a great friend and teammate." Still, let me caution all Eagle fans to prepare for plenty of more hit pieces on Jalen Hurts as the offseason progresses. Remember that these articles did not exist last season when Philadelphia was marching their way towards a near Super Bowl victory in which Jalen Hurts was the best player on the football field. That included Patrick Mahomes. It's the offseason, and there's only one quarterback in the NFL who can win a Super Bowl each and every year. And so if your quarterback is not playing in a Super Bowl or winning a Super Bowl, there will be question marks about him. You are going to see a ton of articles written about Josh Allen, a ton of articles written about Justin Herbert, and articles written about all these other quarterbacks who didn't win a Super Bowl this year because, again, only one quarterback can, and you got to be smart enough to be able to weed through most of the muck and pick out what's actually real and what's there to just make you click on it. Now, it's not all doom and gloom on today's show. I mean, come on, we got some good news from the NFL the other day as they released the projected compensatory picks for every NFL team. And the Eagles, how about getting an additional 4 picks due to them losing Javon Hargrave, Isaac Seumalo, Andre Dillard, and TJ Edwards. This will give Philadelphia projected 10 draft picks in April's 2024 draft, including 1 first, 2 seconds, a third, 4 fifths, what's Howie going to do there, and 1 sixth. And with a projected $40-ish million in free cap space once the new season begins, I expect it to be a very exciting offseason in case you weren't already really entertained by the Birds drama the past week and a half. Now remember, Sirianni and Roseman will speak to the media at some point today, and we'll have full coverage of that press conference tonight during our Wednesday Link Live, myself and Josh Davis, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and also on tomorrow's show. I don't expect anything crazy in this press conference. They're not going to make any sort of wild announcement. It'll be very clear, like, oh yeah, Sirianni's going to be the guy, and we love Jalen Hurts, and we're doing a very broad search for coordinators, but there's got to be something interesting coming from that, so join the show tonight, and get ready for tomorrow's recap as well. I'm Thomas Mott, trying to break down all the craziness in Philadelphia day in and day out. This has been the Thomas Mott Show.